Ethan Cole wasn't born with silver in his veins. He forged it from fire. Detroit, Michigan. A place known for engines and steel, not for billionaires. That's where his story began, in a two-bedroom apartment above a worn-out auto repair shop. His father, Frank, was a mechanic. His mother, Grace, a nurse who worked night shifts just to keep the lights on. While other kids played in the streets, Ethan spent his nights taking apart broken radios, rewiring old computers from junkyards, and dreaming of escape. He wasn't chasing wealth back then. He was chasing control. Control over the chaos that had defined his childhood. At 18, he built his first computer from scrap. At 25, he created an algorithm that caught the attention of Silicon Valley investors. And by 30, he was the youngest CEO in the energy tech sector, running a company called Seconds.The, a company that promised to redefine power. And it did. Centra's innovation, a system that used AI to optimize national energy grids, turned the world's attention toward Ethan Cole. Governments wanted it, corporations wanted it, and Wall Street crowned him the future of energy. By 35, he owned a $90 million penthouse overlooking Central Park. The view stretched across the city, the skyline reflecting on the glass walls like his own empire. Every morning, he'd stand there in silence, sipping black coffee, watching New York move beneath him like an obedient machine. To the world, he was a symbol of genius. To himself, he was proof that control was the only way to survive. Inside Centra's headquarters, 45 floors of glass and power, people whispered his name like a warning. Ethan didn't lead through fear, but through precision. He was cold, methodical, and terrifyingly effective. Employees said you could feel his presence before he even walked into a room. He demanded excellence, not loyalty, and that made him untouchable. He wasn't cruel, at least not deliberately, but in his pursuit of perfection, empathy became optional. When one of his engineers once told him he was too hard on people, Ethan simply replied, "Pressure makes diamonds. If you can't handle it, you were never meant to shine." That quote later appeared in Forbes, printed next to a smirking photo, black suit, silver tie, and that glint of arrogance only the self-made carry. He owned 5 supercars, a private jet, and a collection of rare watches worth more than most people's homes. But despite all that wealth, his world was hollow. He'd built a kingdom, but no one lived in it with him. The only person who ever got close was Lydia Weston, a brilliant Wall Street strategist he met during an investor conference in Chicago. She was sharp, confident, and had ambition written in her eyes. Ethan admired that, not her heart, but her hunger. Their connection wasn't love at first sight. It was power recognizing power. Within a year, they married. The media called them the American royalty of tech and finance. Two prodigies, united by empire, not emotion. But behind closed doors, their marriage was a quiet war, fought not with fists, but with silence. Lydia wanted a husband. Ethan wanted a partner who could match his ambition. The home felt more like a boardroom than a sanctuary. They rarely touched, barely spoke unless it was about deals, stocks, or appearances. The warmth had long faded, replaced by luxury and tension. Ethan didn't notice the distance growing. He didn't care, because in his mind, success excused everything. Every night, he sat by the glass wall of his penthouse, city lights painting his face in gold and shadow. He'd tell himself this was what he worked for, this view, this life, this empire. But deep down, there was a whisper, a small, silent voice he had long ignored, a voice that asked, "At what cost?" He drowned it with whiskey. He silenced it with new deals. He replaced it with applause. But success has a strange way of blinding even the sharpest minds. The higher you climb, the less you see what's below you. And for Ethan Cole, the man who built his world from nothing, the fall was already beginning. He just didn't know it yet. Every empire falls, not with thunder, but with whispers. For Ethan Cole, the whispers began on a Monday morning. It was supposed to be just another board meeting, another day of profit reports, charts, and praise. But that morning, his assistant entered with trembling hands, holding a tablet. Seconds.The, the untouchable tech empire, had been breached. The headlines flashed like warning sirens across every financial screen in America. Massive data leak at Seconds. Government AI contract exposed. Did the billionaire CEO know? Within hours, the company's stock plummeted 43%. Investors flooded phone lines, demanding answers. The board, the same people who once cheered his name, now stared at him with suspicion. Ethan, calm on the surface, tried to control the storm. He called emergency meetings, doubled cybersecurity teams, and gave his PR department strict orders. Tell the media we're in full control. Nothing leaves this building without my approval. But the truth was, control was slipping. He could feel it, like sand pouring through his fingers. Behind the chaos, his chief financial officer and best friend, Mason Reed, assured him everything would be fine. Mason had been there since the early days, back when they built Sintra from a two-room apartment with second-hand computers. He was the man Ethan trusted the most. If there was one person he believed would never betray him, it was Mason. But the numbers didn't lie. Hidden deep in the financial records, Ethan discovered unaccounted transfers, millions of dollars quietly rerouted to offshore accounts. Each transaction carefully timed, disguised, and approved under his own digital signature. He stared at the files in disbelief. His password, his digital key, used to launder company funds. But by who? The answer hit him like a blade. Mason. When Ethan confronted him in his glass office overlooking Manhattan, the city lights looked colder than ever. "Tell me you didn't do this," Ethan demanded. "Tell me I'm wrong." Mason didn't flinch. He didn't deny it. Instead, he smiled, calm, measured, dangerous. "You taught me how the game works, Ethan. Don't act surprised now that I play it better." Ethan's jaw tightened. He wanted to hit him, to tear down everything between them. But Mason leaned in, his voice almost sympathetic. "Sign the transfer, Ethan. Move temporary control of your shares to me until this mess clears. I can fix this. I have government contacts who'll make it all disappear." Ethan hesitated. His pride told him to handle it alone, but the world was collapsing too fast. Investors were fleeing, regulators were circling, and the media had already declared war. He needed a quick move, a temporary fix. So he signed. The moment his pen touched the paper, he didn't realize he'd just handed Mason everything: power, ownership, control. It was the biggest mistake of his life. Within 48 hours, Sintra's board voted to remove him as CEO. His accounts were frozen, his assets seized under federal investigation. Mason publicly announced that Ethan Cole had voluntarily stepped down amid ethical concerns. The news exploded across every platform. Anchors dissected his downfall, analysts mocked his reckless leadership, and the same magazines that once called him visionary now branded him a fraud. Then came the final blow. Lydia, his wife, his public partner, the woman who once smiled beside him for cameras, now turned on him. She filed for divorce the next morning, calling him a danger to her reputation and future. He didn't even get to speak to her. Her lawyer delivered the papers to his doorman, along with a message. "This is business, Ethan. Don't make it personal." Personal? It had always been personal. Within a week, the penthouse was emptied, the jet repossessed, and his name wiped from Sintra's building. Even his personal assistant refused to take his call. The billionaire who once ruled over boardrooms was now locked out of his own empire. Every door he'd built, every friend he'd made, shut. At first, he told himself it was temporary. He still had power. He still had connections. He'd rebuild. But deep down, he knew something had shifted. The man who once controlled everything now couldn't control a single thing, not even his own name. As the weeks passed, his phone went silent. The invitations stopped coming. The world moved on without him. He'd spent his life building walls so high that when they finally crumbled, no one was left inside to save him. That was the cruel truth about power. It isolates you until your fall is yours alone to witness. And for Ethan Cole, the fall had just begun. When a man like Ethan Cole falls, the world doesn't offer him sympathy. It offers him spectacle. His face was everywhere. News anchors, bloggers, talk shows. Everyone wanted a piece of his ruin. They called it the downfall of a tech god. Memes spread faster than his products ever did. The billionaire who couldn't save himself. That headline trended for weeks. And for the first time in his life, Ethan had no reply. The bank accounts were empty. His credit cards declined. His private jet was grounded, seized by the state. The penthouse in Manhattan, sold off in an emergency auction. Even the marble floors he once walked on barefoot now belonged to someone else. At first, he tried to fight it. Lawyers, appeals, endless calls to people he thought were friends. But no one answered. His assistant blocked him. His company email was deactivated. And his driver, the same man who once stood waiting in the rain for hours, stopped picking up. One by one, everyone vanished. When power leaves you, so does the illusion of loyalty. By the second month, Ethan had sold nearly everything: watches, suits, his last remaining car, just to pay legal fees. All he had left was a worn-out sedan parked on the edge of Brooklyn, a few blocks away from the East River. That car became his home. He'd wake to the sound of buses rumbling by and the sharp cold of morning air cutting through the cracked window. Every night, he stared at the city skyline from afar, those towers of light that once belonged to him, now mocking him from a distance. He'd whisper to himself, "You built it all, Ethan, and now you can't even afford a window view." Days blurred together. He walked miles every morning just to stay warm. Sometimes he'd pass billboards advertising Central Dynamics, his old empire, now bearing Mason Reed's signature smile. Every ad felt like a knife twisting deeper. He tried applying for consulting work, but no one wanted to hire Ethan Cole, the scandalous billionaire. His name was poison. Soon, even food became a luxury. One evening, after 2 days without eating, he searched the alleys behind a diner for leftovers. That was when he caught a reflection of himself in a broken mirror leaning against a dumpster. For the first time, he didn't recognize the man staring back. The tailored suits were gone. His once proud posture was hunched, his hands shaking. His eyes, once sharp with vision, were hollow. And yet, somewhere deep inside, that small ember of pride still burned. The kind of pride that keeps you breathing even when you have no reason to. As the night fell, a storm swept through Brooklyn. Cold rain pounded the pavement. Ethan sat inside his car, shivering, staring at the city lights reflecting off the wet streets. He checked his pockets. A few coins left. Out of desperation, he stepped out and walked to the corner store for instant coffee. Outside, near the flickering streetlight, he saw an old man holding a cardboard sign that read, "Hungry. Anything helps." Ethan hesitated. He looked at the coins in his palm, his last few cents, and then at the man. For reasons he couldn't explain, he handed them over. Every single one. The old man smiled, eyes watery, and whispered, "God bless you, son." Ethan turned away quickly, ashamed, not for helping, but for realizing how far he had fallen. When he looked back a second later, the old man was gone. He thought nothing of it until he saw her. Under that same flickering streetlight stood a woman in white. Not young, not old, just radiant. Her white dress shimmered faintly despite the rain. Her face calm, eyes soft, almost glowing. Ethan froze. The street around them was empty, silent. Even the rain seemed to slow. She looked at him with a half-smile and said, "You gave your last coin to a beggar. That means your soul still breathes." Her voice was gentle but carried a weight that silenced everything inside him. Before he could speak, lightning flashed, and in that brief burst of light, she was gone. He stood there for minutes, staring at the empty space she'd been. His heartbeat pounded in his ears. Rain soaked his clothes, but he didn't move. It felt real, too real. By the time he returned to his car, he told himself it was exhaustion, hunger, or madness. Maybe he was finally losing his mind. But the next morning, everything changed. He woke up to find a small folded piece of paper tucked into his coat pocket. It wasn't there before. Hands trembling, he opened it. The handwriting was delicate, written in black ink. "Your fall isn't your ending. Go to Haven Street, number 12. He stared at the note for minutes. He didn't know who put it there, how it got there, or what Haven Street even meant. But something about the way it was written, precise, calm, almost familiar, sent a chill down his spine. For the first time since his life collapsed, he felt something other than despair. He felt curiosity. It didn't make sense, but neither did anything else in his world. And when a man loses everything, even a mystery becomes a reason to live. Ethan folded the note carefully, slipped it back into his coat, and looked out at the waking city. The rain had stopped. The sun was breaking through the gray. He whispered to himself, "Haven Street." And with that, he started the engine, a broken man chasing the one thing he hadn't felt in months. Hope. Ethan Cole drove through the streets of Brooklyn with a mix of skepticism and faint hope. The note in his coat pocket had led him here, a narrow, graffiti-stained street called Haven Street. The buildings around him were tired, old brick with peeling paint. It was far from the gleaming skyline he had once called home. Yet something about this place felt necessary. At number 12, he saw it. The Haven Home. A small shelter with flickering lights and a hand-painted sign. Children's laughter mixed with the aroma of hot soup drifting into the cold evening air. He parked his battered sedan, took a deep breath, and stepped inside. The first person he saw was Olivia Turner, 36, standing behind the front desk. She had a presence that immediately commanded respect. Yet there was warmth in her eyes that put even the most weary souls at ease. She was arranging donated coats, her sleeves rolled up, focused and unflappable. Ethan hesitated. He had no right to be here. He had no business in this world of broken people, of lives rebuilt one meal at a time. "I'm looking for shelter," he said. his voice uncertain. I mean, I need a place to stay for a while. Olivia looked up. There was no judgment in her gaze, only careful curiosity. Name, she asked. Ethan. Blake. He replied quickly. Truth, as always, felt dangerous. Ethan Blake, she repeated slowly, almost testing the name. All right, you can stay. But there are rules. You cook, clean, help with repairs. You do that, and you sleep under a roof. Fail, and there's the door. It wasn't generosity. It was accountability. And Ethan, for the first time, realized he craved structure. The first night was awkward. The children eyed him curiously, sensing the strangeness in his demeanor. He didn't know their names, their stories, or how to interact. Every smile he offered felt stiff, rehearsed. But he stayed. Days passed. Ethan started learning the rhythm of the shelter. He washed dishes, cleaned floors, and repaired old computers in the community room. Slowly, he began tutoring the children, teaching them coding, math, and logic. Something shifted inside him with each lesson. He discovered the weight of responsibility outside of profit margins, stock options, and billion-dollar contracts. He realized kindness was a currency he had never spent before, and it mattered far more than money. Olivia noticed the change. She didn't pry, but she watched him with a mix of patience and admiration. Ethan began to respect her in ways he had never respected anyone. She was firm, unyielding, and yet capable of inspiring trust with a single glance. It was during these days that he first saw her again, the white lady, a blur of white across the courtyard, a child about to trip over a loose floorboard, saved at the last second by a gentle hand that didn't seem to belong to anyone, a lost man guided to safety, the stranger never speaking a word, never seen by anyone else. Who is she? Ethan asked Olivia one evening, curiosity tipping into obsession. Olivia's eyes darkened, and she shook her head. You've seen her? No one ever sees her. Some things aren't meant to be explained. The mystery only deepened Ethan's fascination. The presence of this woman, always at the edges of danger, unseen by the world, unsettled him. And yet it inspired him. Through the rhythm of the shelter, Ethan began to understand the fragility of life and the power of compassion. He wasn't a billionaire here. He was just another man, learning how to make a difference. For the first time in years, he slept without fear of cameras, headlines, or betrayal. He slept with the knowledge that his value wasn't tied to a net worth, but to how he touched others' lives. And somewhere in the quiet of Haven Street, behind the laughter, the repairs, and the hum of hot soup, Ethan realized he had begun to heal. But he also realized something else. The white lady's presence, fleeting, inexplicable, was more than coincidence. She was a force, a guide, a ghostly guardian nudging him toward something he had long forgotten, redemption. And as he laid down on the thin cot provided to him, he thought, with a small, cautious hope, maybe losing everything wasn't the end. Maybe it was the beginning. Ethan had begun to find peace at Haven Street, learning the rhythm of simple life, of human connection, of quiet purpose. But peace, he was about to discover, is often only the calm before the storm. One rainy afternoon, Olivia handed him a small envelope that had arrived by mail, addressed carefully to Ethan Blake. He frowned. He hadn't given his name to anyone outside the shelter. He certainly hadn't expected correspondence from the outside world. With trembling hands, he opened it. Inside were files, meticulously organized, wire transfers, hidden contracts, and a string of emails. They were damning. Mason Reed's signature was everywhere. Lydia's name appeared in meetings she had claimed were purely business. The truth hit him like a physical blow. Mason and Lydia had conspired together. Together, they had sold Cintra's military AI prototype to foreign agents. They had framed Ethan as the mastermind, a traitor to his country, a criminal in the eyes of the world. Every leak, every accusation, every frozen asset, carefully orchestrated to destroy him and erase his credibility. He read the emails again and again, as if reading faster could change the truth. But the story was unmistakable. Betrayal ran deep, and those closest to him had poisoned his life with ambition and greed. Days later, a headline flickered across the national news. Wall Street's rising star dies in tragic car accident. It was Lydia. Ethan's stomach sank. Something about the crash felt wrong. He studied the photos of the wreckage, read the police reports, and pieced together the anomalies. Missing brake lines, an unfamiliar tire tread at the scene, the suspicious absence of surveillance footage. She hadn't just died. She had been silenced. Mason Reed, now in control of Cintra, used her death to erase all traces of their conspiracy, and the world moved on. But Ethan could never unsee the betrayal. The scope of it stunned him. Not only had he been framed, but this was bigger than he had ever imagined. Government officials, corporate espionage, and silent hands manipulating events in his life like pieces on a chessboard. He felt rage, pure cold, burning rage. And just as he began to plan, the unthinkable happened. Late that night, the Haven Street shelter was engulfed in smoke and flames. A fire had erupted, quickly spreading through the aging wooden beams. Chaos broke out. Children screamed. Volunteers shouted. Panic clawed at every corner. Ethan ran toward the flames. Through the thick smoke, he spotted Olivia trapped beneath a fallen beam. Her leg was pinned. Without thinking, he lifted it, dragging her to safety. His lungs burned, his hands scorched, but he kept going, pulling child after child to safety, refusing to leave anyone behind. And then he saw it again, the White Lady, a figure in luminous white, moving through the inferno with impossible calm. She lifted debris as if it weighed nothing, guiding children and rescuers away from danger. People around them saw nothing but a bright, almost blinding light that seemed to push the smoke and fire back. Ethan's eyes widened. It couldn't be real, yet every action she took saved lives. By the time the firefighters arrived, the blaze was under control, but the shelter had suffered massive damage. Olivia was badly injured, her arm broken, her face scorched. Ethan sat by her side, holding her hand, a mixture of relief, anger, and helplessness washing over him. That night, as the shelter quieted, he realized something. The betrayal from his past, Mason, Lydia, the conspiracy, was far from over. But the fire, the children, Olivia, the White Lady's intervention, it had reminded him that he was not powerless. This was no longer just about survival. It was about justice. It was about exposing the truth. And somewhere deep inside, a spark of clarity ignited. He would not be a victim again. Not of Mason. Not of betrayal. Not of the world. He looked at Olivia, pale and bruised but alive. He whispered, almost to himself, "I'm coming back. I will fix this. I swear it." Outside, the city slept unaware of the lives saved that night. But Ethan understood. He had been given a second chance. A chance to rise again. And the White Lady? She was no longer just a mystery. She was a signal, a reminder that even in darkness there was guidance, unseen but undeniable. The fire had left scars, on the shelter, on Olivia, and on Ethan himself. But it had also left something else, clarity. Ethan sat in his small room at the temporary Haven Street quarters, staring at the ceiling. The anger toward Mason Reed, the betrayal by Lydia, the conspiracy, it all burned within him like an unquenchable fire. And yet, there was another memory he couldn't shake. The White Lady. He had seen her save lives in the chaos of the blaze. She had guided children, lifted debris, moved through smoke as if untouched. And every time he tried to find her in footage, in hospital records, in eyewitness reports, she did not exist. No name, no address, no proof. It was impossible. And yet, he knew she was real. He had to know who she was. His search led him far from Brooklyn, back to the place where it all began, Detroit, Michigan. A city of rust and resolve, where he had scraped his first success from nothing, and where the memory of his mother still lingered in quiet, empty corners. Ethan walked into a small, brick church near the outskirts of the city, the kind of church that had stood for decades, watching the city change. The priest at the desk looked up, old, gentle eyes, like someone who had seen too many lives unfold. "I'm Ethan Cole," he said cautiously. The priest paused, studied him, and then nodded. "I've been expecting you," he said softly. Ethan frowned. "Expecting me?" The priest gestured toward a cabinet in the back. "You've been running from what's always been with you." He pulled out a worn photograph, yellowed at the edges. Ethan took it in his hands. It was a picture of a woman, warm eyes, a gentle smile, strong yet tender hands. And then he saw it. The white nurse uniform, the pendant around her neck, the same uniform he had glimpsed in the White Lady's apparition. His breath caught in his throat. "Grace," he whispered. The name of his mother, who had died saving patients in a hospital fire 27 years ago. The priest nodded. "She never left you, Ethan. Not truly. She's been guiding you all along, even when you couldn't see her. Every loss, every fall, she was there unseen, pulling you back toward the right path." Ethan sank to his knees, tears streaming freely. He had spent decades chasing power, money, control, blind to everything else. Every empire he built, every deal he struck, had left him hollow. And it had taken losing everything, family, fortune, respect, for him to see what truly mattered. He finally understood. The White Lady had not been a stranger. She had been his mother, guiding him from destruction toward redemption. Her presence in the fire, in the streets, in the smallest moments of kindness he had witnessed, all of it had been her. He broke down completely, sobbing in the quiet of that church, mourning his past, but also embracing it. He had lost everything, yes, but in doing so, he had found himself. Grace Cole's spirit had led him here, from arrogance to humility, from isolation to connection, from despair to hope. For the first time, Ethan smiled through his tears. He whispered, almost reverently, "Thank you, Mom. I see now. I understand. I will live the way you would have wanted me to." The wind brushed through the church, stirring the old wooden pews, and in that moment he felt her presence, not as a vision, but as a quiet, unwavering force beside him. The past had broken him. The White Lady had saved him. And now, Ethan Cole was ready to rise. The truth has a way of surfacing, no matter how carefully it is buried. With Olivia by his side, Ethan worked tirelessly to untangle the web Mason Reed had spun. They compiled evidence, traced hidden transfers, and connected every forged document, every secret deal, every email that proved Mason's treachery. It took weeks of careful planning, but eventually, they went to the FBI. The files, the contracts, the proof, all laid bare in meticulous detail. Mason Reed was arrested. Cintra's stolen contracts were recovered. International agents involved in the espionage were apprehended. The media, once eager to vilify Ethan, now declared him vindicated. But the headlines, the applause, the public vindication, none of it tempted him. He had learned that power and wealth were meaningless without purpose, without humanity, without love. Ethan didn't reclaim his empire. He didn't chase his fortune. Instead, he turned his attention to something far more valuable, rebuilding hope. He returned to Haven Street. The shelter, still bearing scars from the fire, became his mission. He repaired it, expanded it, and renamed it the Grace Project, in honor of his mother. It was more than a shelter now. It was a foundation for homeless families, a beacon of second chances, a place where dignity was restored. Ethan worked alongside Olivia. They were partners not just in charity, but in purpose. Together, they cooked, taught, mentored, and rebuilt lives, just as Ethan had been rebuilt. And through it all, he never forgot the White Lady, the spirit of his mother who had guided him through darkness. Every December 12th, the anniversary of Grace Cole's death, he left a single white rose under the broken streetlight where he first encountered her. He did it quietly, without ceremony, yet with profound reverence. A gesture of gratitude, remembrance, and love. Ethan Cole had lost everything, fortune, empire, pride. And in losing it all, he had discovered what truly mattered. Some losses aren't punishments. They're wake-up calls from heaven. Some falls aren't the end, they are the beginning. He looked at the children playing in the courtyard of the Grace Project, the volunteers laughing beside him, Olivia smiling across the room. And for the first time in decades, Ethan felt whole. He had been broken, betrayed, and tested. And yet, here he stood, not as a billionaire, but as a man who understood life, love, and the true measure of legacy. Some things money cannot buy. Some lessons cannot be taught. Some miracles, it seems, arrive in the quietest, brightest forms, guiding us, saving us, leading us home. Ethan smiled, placing another white rose beneath the streetlight. And in that small act, he understood. The journey had not ended. It had only just begun.